Hi everyone and welcome back. Today I want to talk about artificial grass. Having tried several different alternative surfaces for my back garden, I eventually had this fitted about 5 years ago now. And at the time it was a fantastic improvement, an all-round godsend. But would I do it again? Has it been the answer for my greyhound garden? Greyhounds have an amazing ability to turn a beautifully kept lawn into an absolute mud bath in a very short space of time. And if you have wet winters like we do in the UK, it can become an endless job and a really soul destroying one to keep dealing with muddy feet, trailing dirt in, and worse, and it just becomes overwhelming. Artificial turf is often recommended as the solution to this problem, and it's one I took 5 years ago now, having struggled with my greyhounds tearing round the filthy swamp that resulted in my back garden. I'd started off with real turf when I first moved in, and there was a patio at the bottom. And when the grass was destroyed, I tried wood chips. I put a liner down and put wood chips down. And that was great to begin with, but then they started to decompose. And ultimately, I reached a point where I had to dig it out every year, rather like having a horse's stable in deep litter. Every year, you needed to take the whole lot out and start again, which became a big job. And also, it wasn't that cheap to have to keep replacing those wood chips. I don't think it helps that we have a clay subsoil here, so the drainage was very poor. I had puddles of muddy water, and it wasn't just the muddy paws, it was more than that because it went all up their legs, it splashed up their bellies when they charged up and down. And with the UK weather being what it is, so wet, we would just have a short space of time in the summer where it would be dry enough before it all started all over again in the autumn. In the beginning, when I changed to artificial grass, this provided a fantastic, consistent surface all year round, and not having to mow it was an absolute godsend. It was easy to sweep up the leaves from the neighbours' trees and all the other twigs and catkins and bits and pieces that seems to constantly land in the garden here, and I found it very easy to pick up the poop. So in that respect, it was much cleaner. It looked green, it looked presentable, whatever the weather, and it was somewhere I could use for them to do activities and they could lay out and enjoy the sunshine on nice days. So what went wrong? Initially, it all seemed perfect. It was a good colour, and sweeping it helped to fluff it up as well as to clean it up. But as time went on, it went flatter and flatter and flatter, and I just could not get the grass to fluff up again. It's now at the stage where it's completely flattened down, and whatever I do, however much I try to brush it, does not want to stand up and look like grass anymore. It's rather like grass at the end of a festival rather than at the start, or a sad old fleece that's been through the washing machine too many times. Whatever you do to it, you're not going to get it to look like new again. The colour's still good, it's just all weird and flat and squashed. As time has gone on, it's also become harder and harder to keep on top of the smell of urine. That may be because I have 5 dogs and a small space, but it has become a real battle to keep this smell under control. And it's made worse by the lack of drainage, because rinsing the urine away can add to the problem of standing water. I have tried everything I could think of other than spending a lot of money on proprietary chemicals to help deal with the smell. But in the end, I've given up. I tried Zoflora, which is often recommended, and although that adds a nice flowery smell, I personally found that the smell of the Zoflora mingled with the smell of the urine was actually worse than the urine smell in itself. I tried biological laundry liquid, which is often recommended to break down the urine, but that in theory seems to help, but I think it got too diluted in all the wetness of the grass. And I tried bicarbonate soda, which is again recommended, and I think this has the best effect. But again, if you're putting it onto something that's already waterlogged, then you're diluting it so much that it doesn't really do anything useful. So none of them also seemed exactly natural to try and maintain the grass. I wasn't too happy about basically pouring chemicals away all over the garden. It never smelt this bad before. When I had grass, even when I had the wood chips, it never smelt this bad. So I assumed the problem was to do with the actual plastic of the fake grass itself. It had somehow bound with that plastic, got into the backing or the membrane underneath, and I just could not get rid of it. And this meant that the garden smelt really bad. And of course, if the dogs laid out and sunbathed, they came in smelling really bad as well. Now, when I first had it installed, I did ask them to build up a foundation to provide drainage, and they also laid a membrane which was supposed to stop the soil coming through. However, over the time, this has stopped working. So we got to the stage where the puddles were not just water, but they were actually muddy water. And you can see in places where the soil is coming up through the fake grass itself. And you can see it's uneven. The surface is no longer flat. So presumably underneath has either become washed away or the soil has come up, or a combination of both. But basically the substance underneath has changed over the years such that it is no longer providing that surface to put the grass on that you need. And although the grass itself came with a 10-year warranty, I was very clearly told that the foundation was not guaranteed. So the only solution I've been able to come up with as an idea was to raise the level of the whole thing, to basically add a drainage layer on the top and put a new surface above that. So I would have to lift the garden up by a few inches. In effect, then, the whole thing has only really lasted 5 years, as I now need to take drastic, messy and potentially expensive action to deal with the problem. And based on the original cost to have it installed, that means it's worked out at about £300 a year for the privilege of having this artificial grass, which for me, it might not be for you, but for me, that's quite a lot of money. I wouldn't normally spend £300 for something that would just last a year. You could argue that I could relay the same piece of turf on the top, which would save some cost when I try to fix it. But of course, given how bad it smells, I'm not sure that I want to reuse the same piece of grass, and it's completely flat and looks really weird. So I don't think that I am going to be able to reuse this piece of turf. I have to dispose of it. And I haven't got as far as putting anything into action yet. I don't know if I'm going to do this or not, or maybe I'll just do something much more drastic like move house in order to get away with it, which of course is an even dearer way of fixing the problem. So will I do it again? I'm not sure. Looking back, artificial turf has not been the answer I hoped it would be. I'm sure it may well be for other people in different circumstances, maybe with a bigger garden, maybe not as many dogs, maybe with a different foundation for that artificial turf. But these are all things that have means that it's added up to not being the solution I was looking for. So it is back to the drawing board. And I don't know quite where I'm going to go from here. There's a lot to think about, and I'll share some of those things with you next time, because it's all stuff that you need to bear in mind if you're thinking about having artificial turf installed in your garden. If you have it already or you're thinking about it, then do let me know in the comments how you got on or what your thoughts are about having this as a solution for your muddy greyhound garden. That's all for today. Bye for now. Oh yeah. Oh, I did him. Look out for new videos every Monday, and why not subscribe so you don't miss out?